right, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to Cinecosma, or welcome. My name is Shavana. I am here to explore movies and TV shows and other forms of stories through the lens of astrology. And so today's video, as you can see on the screen, we're going to be talking about movies that I personally feel like explore Aries themes. And the same applies, what I'm going to say applies to TV shows and other stories and other forms of media as well. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to stick with movies. Hopefully, these are movies that people have seen before. If not, now you have something on your watch list for you to watch. And so, like I said, let's get into it. Movies that explore Aries themes. So I feel like before you can know what movies explore Aries themes, you need to know what Aries is about. And I, right here on the screen on the right side, have some general facts. Not going to read through all of this, but definitely take a moment to read it if you need to. This is basically what you're gonna learn about Aries from any astrologer, from any website or anything that you read. These are just the general facts, like the main facts that everyone would know about that everyone would know about Aries if you know about astrology. I really want to focus on the keywords and the shadow side aspect on this screen, because these are the main things that I'll be looking at that will pop up in stories that leads me to believe that a stories is giving Aries vibes. Now, the other facts definitely play a role as well, but the keywords on the left side as well as on the right side under shadow side are going to be really important, and they're going to be really important to know about Aries in general, not just for this video. So I want to briefly discuss these keywords because, like I said, they are important. So one thing to know about Aries is that Aries is the first sign in the astrological wheel. There's a total of 12 signs. Some say 13, but the popular consensus is 12 based on the astrology system that I use, right? So Aries is the first zodiac sign, and Aries is all about passion, high intensity, high energy movement. Aries is the sign that is very fast, speed, courage, and the ability to be a self-initiator, which basically just means that Aries is a sign that can get things done on their own. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait to make sure that everything is squared away, which can be a good or bad thing. They don't necessarily plan, again, can be a good or bad thing. And they just do it. They are literally like the slogan for Nike, just do it. Aries is a sign that'll just do it. Think later, act first. Act first, think later. And then also physical combat. Because of all this high energy and high aggression sometimes and high intensity, that leads to Aries needing an outlet. And it tends to be something physical, like something with the body, whether that's playing sports, whether that's doing some sort of fighting or combat, whether that's just, simply being in the gym. Like I said, Aries is a highly active sign, and they need a lot of physical movement to be able to burn all of that energy. Now, this leads me to the shadow side. Now, basically take everything that I just said on the left side and now think about it in terms of how it could look on a negative end. So, as I said, Aries acts first, thinks later. In some cases, that's a good thing, but it can also lead to being extremely impulsive, and being impulsive is not always a good thing to do. Sometimes you do need to plan. Sometimes you do need to slow down. Sometimes you do need to think first, but sometimes Aries can just get so into just moving first that it becomes impulsive. And that is something that can be a shadow or a negative trait in Aries. Then you have aggressive and violent. Aries, again, they're the sign of high energy. They're also the sign of physical combat. When physical combat is used positively, such as if you're playing a sport or whatever, which I guess depending on how you look at it, that could be positive or negative. They can also just tend to be violent, even outside of a setting that calls for physical combat. They can just be violent and very aggressive. That can lead to verbal violence or verbal aggression, like road rage, or it could get physical. So that's another shadow side of Aries, that sometimes that anger and that high energy that they have is used for the wrong things, and it leads to violence and aggressive behavior. Then you have recklessness. This kind of applies with what I've been saying, impulsive as well as aggressive or violent. They can be reckless sometimes and just a little too impulsive, a little too fired up in this sense. Like they can be too fired up sometimes. They're like that fire that just kind of spreads wildly, and it needs some sort of container to kind of control it. But think of like a wildfire. That is what Aries can look like on the shadow side of things. It's just fire spreading, a little reckless, damaging everything, and there's just no controlling them. There's no stopping them. That leads me to the next word, which is domineering. Aries can be a very dominant sign. It's their way or the highway. And the good thing about it, though, is that Aries can be domineering, but they also can move solo if need be. They don't necessarily aim to try to be in control. They are leaders. So if they are in any leadership positions, that could either be good or bad. They could be a little too domineering. They can be a little too in control and controlling, or they could just be a really good leader who like just their energy rubs off on you. Like they don't even need to dominate you because you're just in all of their energy and, you know, how they are as a leader. So the next word we have is confrontational. This one can actually be either way. Sometimes being confrontational doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it can be. Aries is a sign that's not afraid to go looking for a fight. And so I guess that's where it kind of becomes shadow side, when Aries is just looking to pick a fight, especially in situations that don't call for it. You don't need to fight. You can, you know, talk it out like adults. You can just handle it in a peaceful way. Sometimes Aries doesn't want to handle things in a peaceful way. They need, again, to burn that energy, and they want to fight. So I guess that's what I mean in terms of like when it's confrontational and an Aries on the shadow side. And then lastly, hot-headed. I pretty much have just been speaking on that this entire time. They can just be extremely hot-headed, easily upset, easily angered, easily mad, and that can lead to aggressive behavior, that can lead to violent behavior. Or if there's someone who knows how to control their anger, or not necessarily control it, but like they understand like, okay, I can't take my anger out on other people, so let me just like go to the gym or something like that. Like it could look like something like that. So as I said, all of these keywords are going to be important when you're looking at themes of a story. So hopefully you understand Aries a little bit. Again, these are just general basic facts, and you're going to see how these show up in movies. All right, so Aries and storytelling. How does the Aries archetype show up on screen thematically? Now, I want to emphasize that word thematically because there are multiple ways that Aries can show up on screen, but I'm focusing on the theme. So like, let's say you're watching a movie and you're asked the question, what do you think this story means? That's kind of what I mean by thematically. So there's going to be times where you might get Aries energy from a movie, but it's not the theme of the movie. It's just like maybe a specific scene or maybe a specific character has Aries qualities, but the theme of the movie is not in an Aries territory. And I'll explain what I mean with the examples, right? So here are some typical themes that you might find if a story is giving Aries vibes. This is what at least what I pick up on. You're free to, at any time in any of my videos, you're always free to let me know if you agree or disagree, or just let me know like your thoughts and, you know, where your perspective and where your head is at. But here's kind of what I think when I think of Aries and storytelling. So this looks like stories that are about courage and risk-taking. Courage was one of the words that I used in the keywords on that one slide. And so any story where you're watching the entire journey of it from beginning, middle to end, the main character, which is usually how you look at a story, you look at like what the main character needs to do. If it's a story where they need courage and they need to take a risk in order to achieve a goal, you're probably leaning towards Aries territory. Now, there are other signs that could also lead to that, so it's not just Aries, but you would need to look at the whole film and just all the qualities and all of the elements, all of the storytelling elements in the film to be able to narrow it down. But courage and risk-taking is a huge thematic element that is connected to Aries, in my opinion. So courage, bravery, acting in the face of danger and uncertainty. Like I said, Aries is the type to act first, think later. They're not afraid of a fight. They're not afraid to run into danger. So if you're watching a film or you're watching a movie and it's about a character who just kind of acts first and thinks later, and now they're about to head into danger, about to head into a dangerous situation, that's Aries energy right there. That doesn't mean that that character is an Aries, and it still doesn't mean that the entire story is giving Aries, but that is just one like clue that you have, like, okay, this is giving Aries vibes, right? So let's move on to the next one. You have stories about conflict and competition. Again, I briefly mentioned this in the other slide. Aries is the sign that loves physical combat and loves to compete and fight, as I said. So any story that deals with fighting or competing to win, fighting or competing to gain or reclaim power, or fighting and competing to protect or defend. If you're watching a story and that's the theme of it, like the characters need to win something, the characters need to fight for power, the characters need to protect and defend, that is leaning towards Aries territory. Again, there are other signs that could also apply, but Aries is a main factor, especially when it comes to winning something. Aries is a sign that likes to compete and likes to win as well. Aries could be like your athletes, your soldiers. Obviously, athletes, they want to win in whatever sport they're playing. Soldiers want to win. Typically, soldiers are in the setting of like war and they want to win, right? So think of that. Any war stories can be Aries territory, and a lot of sports films can also be Aries territory, just simply for the fact of needing to win and fight or compete to win. So the next point is stories about ambition and self-determination, right? So again, Aries is a sign that feels like they need to prove themselves, even if they don't need to prove themselves. They feel like they need to, right? They have that ambition and drive to work towards whatever goal that they have. Again, that energy that they have just allows them to chase whatever goals and whatever they have going on head first. And they typically are the sign that prefers to forge their own path. So again, if you're watching a movie and you're noticing that this is the theme, right? Like the storyteller or the filmmaker, they want to teach or just share the theme of proving yourself. A character that once doubted themselves, that lacked confidence, now moves into the character arc of proving themselves and having confidence. That is a huge Aries like giveaway too, because Aries is a very confident sign. And if they're not confident, part of an Aries path is to be confident, right? If you are around any Aries and they're not confident, that's that they're out of their equilibrium. Aries should be confident, right? They should have that self-determination. That's one thing that we can all learn from Aries placements, having that confidence, having that self-determination, not needing permission from anyone, and just being confident in your own self to be able to achieve something without second guessing yourself, right? Obviously, it's easier said than done. But again, as I said, when you're watching a movie and that's the theme of it, like you're learning about a character who went from not being that confident to being confident, that's an Aries arc. For essentially this is one way that Aries shows up in storytelling. You could say like, okay, this is possibly an Aries story thematically. And then overcoming adversity, this kind of goes hand in hand with what I've been saying. Obviously there's going to be adversity, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be your antagonists who are in your way that's stopping you from being able to achieve your goals, stopping you to be able to win. Typically in stories where we're watching the characters overcome adversity, that's not limited to Aries, but again, still could be in Aries territory, especially if it's paired with having that confidence and self-determination or paired with competition. And then lastly, stories about Aries shadow. And I just put these all with keywords: impulse, anger, revenge, destructive action. Sometimes you'll watch a film and a character is very angry. A character is very destructive. We're looking at Aries, but from the shadow side. So sometimes the theme might be a character who goes from being impulsive, being reckless, causing havoc, and then needing to like learn to calm down and chill out. So this is stories where Aries is just high off energy. The character is just high off energy. like I said about that wildfire, a character has already started a wildfire and now it needs to be contained, and it needs to, like, people need to put that fire out. Sometimes, there's, positivity in that. Sometimes the characters do learn, and then sometimes they don't. Sometimes the damage that they cause with this, quote unquote wildfire is just too much, and too much damage has been caused. So sometimes that could lead to them going to jail or something like that, or even worse than that, if you know what I mean. So this is another thing that could show up thematically in connection to Aries. But now I want to get into some story examples so I can bring everything full circle. So let's get into it. Okay, so starting with example one, I don't know if you guys have seen any of these movies. We have Speed Racer and we have The Fast and Furious. These obviously have similar vibes, as you can see already just from the movie posters. You see cars and you see words like speed and fast. Sometimes it just becomes so literal. Speed is a word that is in connection to Aries, and fast is a word that also is connected to Aries, as well as furious. As you can see, these two stories are about speed, competition, and winning. Now, there's more to these stories, but essentially the gist that you'll see throughout the story is speed, competition, and winning, right? So these stories embody Aries energy by focusing on speed, competition, and proving oneself through action. Both The Fast and the Furious and Speed Racer center on high stakes racing, where identity and respect are earned by winning, taking risks, and acting boldly. So if you've watched any of these movies, you know that it's all about racing and then winning, because by winning you have crowned yourself queen, or you've crowned yourself king, and you can call yourself the winner. And Aries takes great pride in being the winner. Like I said, Aries wants to win. Because of that, Aries can become pretty egotistical and sometimes even prideful, especially when they actually are winning, which, I mean, some may say, well, okay, if you can back it up, then you can back it up. Like, if you actually are winning and you have the evidence to back it up, then hey, I guess you're allowed to have that pride and you're allowed to have that ego. And these are things that you can see in both of these stories. Speed Racer is a little different because there is more to the story. The Fast and Furious is pretty much proving yourself to race. And there are themes of family and friendship in both of the stories, actually, but it's shown through the need of speed, competition, and winning. So let's look at another example. So example two, on the left here, we have Rocky and we have Creed. In both of these stories, the athlete needs to train hard to be able to win their fight. And so these stories show characters pushing through obstacles by training, fighting, and competing. Success comes from taking action, stepping into the ring, their fighting ring, and proving their ability through performance. And again, there's more to the lore. It's not just simply about proving yourself for other people, but proving yourself for yourself. That's another Aries trait, where you might not feel like you need to prove yourself to other people, but you do have that honor and that need to prove yourself for your own self. Like, you need to know that I can do this and I can win, even if nobody agrees, even if you have haters. But sometimes for Aries, just knowing themselves that they can do it and achieve this goal is enough for them. All right, so now we're looking at example three. These are, again, two stories that I feel like have similar vibes. These stories are about fighting, dominating, and surviving. These stories are centered on combat and dominance. Characters are thrown into battle where strength decides everything and only the strongest survive. So similar to the example number two, right? Just right before this, those stories right before this were about fighting as well, but they weren't as brutal and as bloody as these stories that you're seeing right now. So Mortal Kombat and 300. This is like Aries all the way to the max, like to the point where it's blood everywhere and it's just all or nothing. Like, Mortal Kombat, depending on which one you're watching, can be a little cleaner. Mortal Kombat obviously started out as a video game, and then they've made movies. This Mortal Kombat that you see on the screen is the very first movie adaptation of the game. And then 300, I mean, you can just look at the poster and kind of get a vibe for what it's about. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw or peeped in the general facts slide how I mentioned that Aries, the body parts, the head, and blood. So if you see a story that is just straight up fighting, straight up bloody, you're more than likely in Aries territory. And so these two I felt like are similar in vibe. Mortal Kombat, you know, that's more competition. We're still in that realm of competition, whereas 300 is more war-like in a sense. So this is my last example, example 4, and I'm using Kill Bill and Colombiana, some female-led Aries stories. These stories are about hunting, attacking, and avenging. In these stories, the main characters, who are both shown on the movie posters, they're out looking for blood. You know what I mean? These stories follow characters driven by revenge who take direct, aggressive action against their enemies. Instead of waiting or planning from a distance, they hunt their targets, confront them head on. A lot of Aries related stories tend to fall into like male territory, but these are examples where the woman is taking on Aries characteristics. Now, that doesn't mean that the characters are actually Aries, but this is an Aries type of story because the theme of the story is going from avenging. This would be also, you could say, on the shadow side. Honestly, arguably, all the stories, especially this example 3 and this one, you could say could lean towards Aries and the shadow side, depending on how you look at it. But any story where a character is seeking revenge, and they're not just simply seeking revenge, but they're also seeking to fight and to attack you and harm you with aggression. That's Aries territory, and especially Aries territory and its shadow. But I hope that you see what I mean when I explain how Aries can show up in storytelling by looking at all the examples that I gave. So to summarize, Aries stories are defined by action, conflict, and momentum. Characters don't wait, they act, they confront, and they prove themselves through what they do. So yeah, this is my Aries and storytelling. This is just one quick, hopefully this is quick, way that I see Aries show up in storytelling, but I'll have plenty of videos that I'll be making on this channel that also deal with Aries and storytelling again. So don't worry, this will not be the only time I talk about this subject. This is just kind of a way to ease you into just my perspective and how I'm looking at stories through an astrological lens. So thank you for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to Cinecosma, especially if you enjoyed the video, and follow Cinecosma on all the platforms. I'm really just active on YouTube, Instagram. If I'm going to be active on anything else, it'll most likely be under the name Cinecosma as well. But in the meantime, make sure to follow and subscribe. If you have any questions or anything you need any clarification, definitely put it in the comment section below. And let me know what you think about the video. Thank you. Bye.